Alright, so I picked up something that I'm really excited to try out and see if it works for the way that I do all of my audio recording. And I have picked up the Rodecaster Pro II, also known as the RCP2 from Rode. Now, this thing is pretty overkill. I was very lucky and I was able to pick it up open box. I paid about 350 Canadian for it, which is still a lot of money. Now, the mixer that I've been using since basically starting to upload weekly videos on YouTube back in 2020 is the MG10XU. I've done some videos on this. I've done some videos on how I've set it up. They were back in my earlier days of creating videos, so they may not be as great. But this thing is incredible. I use it a lot. And as you can see, I use it for a lot of things. I even had to unplug some stuff so that I could pull it all the way over here. But this is an incredibly handy tool. Having all of these channels and being able to have a lot of flexibility is really great, especially considering the way that I like to record my audio for both streaming and for my YouTube stuff. Now, when I picked up the MG10XU, I actually paid around 260 Canadian before taxes. It came out to about 300 bucks after tax. And, I've gotten a lot of use out of it. I use it practically every single day. And again, I use it for YouTube and streaming. And this helped me learn a lot about audio. Now, let's talk about some of the specs quickly without getting into too much technical jargon. You can read the technical here while I'm kind of going through this page. But interesting thing that we have here is we have 4 combo jack inputs, which can be used for microphone, line, or instrument. There's 2 balanced line outputs and then 4 headphone outputs. You can also do Bluetooth connectivity, which is really cool. Works for both a speaker or a headset, which is really nice. There are 2 USB-C interfaces. One would go to your main computer. That one has the multi-channel and a whole bunch of other things. And the second one only has the mix minus, so it's not nearly as feature-rich as the main USB-C, which is unfortunate because I do like to do a lot of things with both of the computers. We'll see how that ends up affecting me. It's got a sample rate of 48K, which is pretty good. Depth of 24-bit. Really nice thing is that you can record directly on a micro SD card put into the device, and you can also record directly to a USB-C removable drive. And you can also record directly onto the computers that you're connected to, which is really great. It has both Ethernet and Wi-Fi, and it's got about 4 gigs of internal storage. And the preamps that are in here are from Revolution. They are extremely high quality preamps. They kind of blow the water off of my MG10XU, but also keep in mind that this Rodecaster Pro II at retail is almost $1,000 Canadian. I think it's about $700 US typically. Now, that's a lot of money, and it would have to really provide a lot of value to someone to spend that kind of money. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to look at it from the approach that I didn't pay nearly that much, but it's not often that you'll be finding them open box like that. And yeah, we'll see how things go. So let's just get this box open, take a look at what's inside. We are currently talking on my Rode Pod mic that is plugged into the MG10XU. Once we switch over, we'll see how that sounds different. I do have some EQ done on the microphone within the mixer. Once we get close to switching the microphone over to the Rodecaster, we will switch this to neutral, and we'll see how they sound between the two. But anyways, back to getting this box open. Again, this was open box, so this may not be exactly how it's laid out, coming straight from Rode, but it does have all the stuff that we need. So let's go ahead and get this thing open. As you can see, they advertise Revolution preamps pretty much all over the place and Aphex processing. Open this up. Welcome to Next Level Audio. They have some suggestions for other Rode devices to use with this. We're going to open this up. I believe in here I have the power brick and the power cord. We have the device itself, which is relatively large. Keep that in mind. We'll compare it in size to my MG10XU. And in here, I believe it's just the USB-C to USB-C cable. All right, so if we do a size comparison with my MG10XU, width-wise, the Rodecaster is a bit wider, a little bit. Not significant, but still, still a pretty significant amount. It is, however, a little bit shallower than my MG10XU. Not by a significant margin, but a little bit. It is almost basically as tall. It has a slightly different angle to it. But in terms of size, it's definitely not small. Now, as you can see here, we have some smart pads. There's 8 smart pads, and there's 8 banks worth of smart pads within here, which is really, really, really cool. You can do a lot of things with them. You can set them up to effects. You can set them up to sound clips. You can set them up to be just MIDI controls. You can set them up to be a whole bunch of things. We'll go over that. You have some sliders and faders here, which is great. They are pretty solid feeling. They feel like metal, and they're not motorized, but they feel pretty solid. Hello. We have some buttons here. So we have a mute and we have a solo. We have a recording button here. We have a master knob, and then we have 4 knobs for the headphones. So you can manually control the levels of all those headphones, which is really cool. On the back here, we have the 4 inputs. We have the monitor outs for speakers. We have the 4 headphone outs. We have the power button, the power from the USB-C. We have a Kensington lock. We have Ethernet. We have the SD card slot. We have the main PC USB-C, and then we have the secondary PC USB-C. All right, so now that we've got the Rodecaster booted up, it's going to give us this welcome screen. We're going to choose our language. We're going to choose our time. How do I? Okay. Month, we are the 6th and the 30th. Perfect. We are using PM. It's 4:02, sure. Time zone. I have no idea which direction I should be going for this. Eastern, there we go. Go next. We'll do Wi-Fi. Allow that to connect to the network. Really don't like how you could see my big old head. All right, I already updated the firmware, so it's going to say that we're up to date. I don't want to share any resources with them, statistics. We're going to do Setup Wizard. Okay. Set all of them to Unity. Make sure. All right. All headphones to the minimum. Okay. Connect headphones. All right, give me a sec. All right. Headphones are in. Wait, I didn't hear anything. What sound? Can't hear any sound. Hold on. Oh, that's why I'm in the wrong port. Alright. My fault. Okay, that's comfortable. Alright, we only use one microphone, so let's set the rest of these to lines. And now it's going to want us to switch over to the microphone. So give me 1 sec. I don't know if you heard, we're just going to set all my inputs to the default. We're going to set the microphone to neutral like we talked about. Bluetooth we'll do later. So USB inputs. So USB can be used as a stereo input and multi-channel output, which is very nice. USB 1 chat has the ability to do chat features, so that's great because I do use Discord entirely on my streaming PC, which is what the USB 1 is. USB 2 could be used as additional input and output. Now, the key here for me is going to be able to send just my microphone to that output and have just the game audio come as my input. So we'll see how well that works. And we can drag and rearrange all this stuff, which is cool. I'd actually want these to be over here because I will be using those the most, and probably that. So to give you a little bit of context, on the MG10XU, first channel is my microphone. Second, third, and fourth I use for other microphones. So the second and the third channel, I usually end up using those with wireless microphones. So I actually have a wireless adapter plugged into channel 2 right now. And then in channel 3, I actually have a 3.5mm to XLR adapter that I use with the Rode Go2 wireless. Extremely handy. Now, 5.6 is currently being used for console, and that includes any audio that comes through my monitor. My monitor, I have the output going into here. That's what these cables are connected to. And yeah, so this controls anything that I plug into my monitor. So my Switch, my Steam Deck, all that kind of stuff, all the audio goes through the monitor. Now, 7.8 is my gaming PC, and that is also done through analog. All of this is analog. I don't do any digital on here. And so I'm able to kind of control all of that, which is really, really nice. And then 9.10 is my streaming PC, which is also done through analog. And then up at the top over here, I have my FX getting split. It's hard, I can't really pull this over far enough. But I have my FX being split. Let's see if okay, you'll be able to see now. So I have my FX being split out towards both computers, and that is utilizing this channel here, which is technically kind of like a second output. And what I use this for is just sending my microphone to my streaming computer and my gaming computer. So on my gaming computer, that's used for game chat. When I'm in a game like Counter-Strike, BattleBit, all that kind of stuff. And on the streaming PC, that is used for Discord, so that everybody in Discord doesn't hear everything that's coming through my mixer. They're only going to hear my microphone. Normally, that would actually be end up used with these actual effects. but none of the effects work very often, so it doesn't end up doing anything, and I think it only works through the digital anyways. Yeah, so none of the FX works, so it doesn't really matter. And yeah, as you can see when I speak into my microphone, we're doing okay. We're pretty loud. And here I have, this is going to my streaming PC. So this is the actual mixer output that's going to my streaming PC. This is the cable that goes to my headphones. And then these cables are the ones, they're far away right now because they're not long enough, but these are what go to my DAC amp for my speakers, my monitor speakers that are on my wall. So let's continue through here. It's going to tell us about the smart pads. The icon shows you the main type, so that's cool. Shows all device settings and preferences are saved as a show. Shows can be saved, loaded, shared at any time. So that's cool. I can kind of have a show set for YouTube and a show set for streaming, for example. Default show, let's call it YouTube. Let's take these off, they're getting a little warm. Select icon. Oh, that's cute. Oh, that's it, that's all we got. And we'll just use the default. Cool. And here we are. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff on here. So as I mentioned, there are 8 banks of these pads. Now, it all depends on how many I have currently set up. You can see that it's only going to 3 right now. And that's because 1 and 2 are filled and then 3 is empty. Once you fill up 3, then 4, and then so on and so forth. The really cool thing about these, though, is that they can also control MIDI devices. So you could use this to control OBS. You could use it to control a DAW program like Logic, Fruity Loops, any of those pieces of software, which is really, really cool. The touchscreen is pretty much the major selling point of this device, and we'll go over that in a second. And then obviously we have our faders. We have a bunch of buttons up top. It allows us to hop right into that channel and go right to the settings, which is really, really nice. And again, we have the mono or the solo, I believe. And then we have the mute. So that's really cool. These buttons are all very buttony, which is nice. You know, it's actually tactile. Whereas the pads are more like a drum pad where there's no actual tactile feel to that. The wheel is very tactile. It basically feels like a scroll wheel. There are sections and little like notches where it stops, and it's also clicks, so that's pretty cool. So I think if I click on a channel, you can change the dB. So this is used for a lot of different things, it seems, which is really cool. All right, so let's go through everything on the touch screen. So we're going to hop into the first channel. I'm just going to press the button here. You can kind of see it in the corner. And we're going to hop in here, and we can see all of our input channels from the back. And we can pair these into stereo. So if I want, I can pair 1 and 2 into stereo. I can pair 2 and 3 into stereo. I can pair 3 and 4 into stereo, which is really, really nice and a nice feature. And you can also select any of the other things. So this is basically your what is going to this fader, which is currently set to purple on the far left. What is going into this fader. And you can also change the color. So if you want, you can change it to the pink and select, and it'll change the color of the button as well. Now, if we hop back into this channel, there's a bunch of different processing in here. So one, there's our dB levels that we can change with the knob here. There's the phantom power, and I'm not sure what that is. I will put it on the screen when I figure it out. There's also the presets, so we're going to set ourselves into neutral, podcast, and broadcast. Those are just presets. You can set all of these things again with the knob. You can change the depth. Maybe we should sound what this. We should see what this sounds like. So hold on. All right, so you should be able to hear me now, and this is within the Rodecaster, and this is on the, let's go to neutral settings. So this is what the neutral setting sounds like within the Rodecaster using my pod mic. Now, this is what my pod mic sounds like on my MG10XU, and if I go ahead and, this is with the EQ, if I go ahead and set that all to neutral, this is what I neutrally sound like on the MG10XU. So back in here, if we go ahead and look at the presets, we can, change how we sound. So if I do podcast studio, seems to be a little bit more bassy. Neutral is a little bit higher tone. And the broadcast, let's see. So the podcast is pretty bassy, and the broadcast also seems to be even heavier in the bass. And neutral is pretty much in the middle, so that's pretty cool. And again, we can change all of these other settings here. We can set a high pass filter, a de-esser, a noise gate, so we can kind of set our threshold. So I'm going to be quiet here. And the visuals on this are amazing. That makes a lot of these things that, a lot of people probably don't know what they mean. They make it a lot easier to understand, right? So I'm trying to make it so that this line is above a certain section so that whenever I'm not speaking, there's no audio coming through. So that's pretty cool. There's a compressor, there's an equalizer, an exciter, panning, and we're back to the high pass filter. Now, all of these are going to be set to a particular default based on the type of microphone that you choose. So if we choose another microphone, it's going to choose different defaults for that. So the other thing that we have is we have some very simple effects. So we have an echo. So if I turn this off, or turn this on, sorry, it's going to be a little bit of an echo. And if I go to the reverb and I turn that on, you're going to hear a little bit of reverb. So if I decide to sing, turn a little bit of reverb on, sound a little nicer. Now, as it mentions here, there are also more effects on the smart pads. So if I want to go ahead and I can do an effect, and this one is the robot effect. So if I turn that on, I should sound a little bit more, robot? Megaphone? Megaphone, oh wow. So this kind of sounds like I am speaking through a megaphone, so that's cool. And the robot feature.
Not sure if I like, the voice disguise. The robot. Not sure if I like the robot very much. But that may prove useful someday. The voice disguise, there's no options, it's either just on or off.
So that's interesting. And here, you can change your pitch.
So, now I sound very interesting. And
I can make myself sound really deep.
Or I can make myself sound super high. So my friends are gonna hate me, I'm sure.
So that's really cool. I like having those abilities. You can also set things like actual sound effects. So we can add via the Rode Central application, or we can record one. So if I go boo, boo, and now I press it, boo, and there you go. Pretty simple. So that's pretty cool. What else? We can do more stuff on the pads. We can end up doing a few things. So there's a sensor, so we can do a default, which is just beep. So you son of we can get pretty fancy with that. Or we can do a custom one. Bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word. Bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word. Bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word, bad. So that's terrible. So while active, the sound's going to play. Trash talk while active. Trash talk will mute the audio output to remote guests, meaning they won't hear you or your guests in the room. So that's cool. Fade in and out will obviously fade channels in and out. Back channel is basically like what a producer would use to talk to people So it creates a separate mix from the main mix to allow communication. So that's pretty cool. And then ducking will automatically lower the channels, all the other channels, except for microphone 1, specifically microphone 1. Now, if we go into the settings for the actual Rodecaster itself, we can see here we have those fader options again that you saw earlier. The outputs, we can select our headphones. So by default, it's selected mine as using the NTH 100s. We can change it to a low sensitivity or high sensitivity, and then go back to the NTH. So there's that. I'm currently using my Sennheiser HDX 6XXs, so the NTH setting actually works pretty well. For monitor, you can have it so that it auto mutes the monitor output. So whenever a microphone channel is on, it'll automatically mute that, so it prevents feedback from your monitors into your microphones, which is pretty cool. It can do the same thing for the Bluetooth output, and then you can set it to be fixed as well. So that's cool. For routing, we can set where everything is going to be going, so you can control mixes. So this is really, really, really cool. We can set it so that, you know, if I want to, I can have music coming into one of these inputs, and I won't be able to hear it, but everybody else will. This is something that I'm probably going to play around with quite a bit and trying to get into a place that I want it. I will probably be doing a follow-up video as to how I end up having this thing set up, because one thing I noticed, especially on YouTube, is that there weren't a lot of people setting this up for dual PC streaming, for example. And obviously that was one of the main reasons that I did so much work with my MG10XU. So I'll be doing the same here and seeing if this actually even works as well for a dual PC setup. So listen, so this actually talks about that button that I was talking about earlier. When solo's engaged, the host will hear the channel at the fader level, or you can set it to be pre-fader. So that's cool. Multi-tracking, so for recording, we can record directly in the USB and into the SD card, which is really, really nice. And we can set it to be pre-fader or post-fader. And let's hold on one second. So now anything that goes into my computer through the USB is going to be pre-fader. So no matter how much the fader on the main line, it's going to be fine, but the chat, what I'm currently using, it's going to go and be actually edited by the fader. And processing, this is for the master. So this applies to kind of everything. This is for the master compiler, so you can set a higher gain. So if you feel like the device is not loud enough in Windows or Mac, you can change the gain to be a lot higher. I'm just going to leave it as is. And you can also adjust your output delay in case you're having issues lining up your audio and your video in recordings. If we go to the smart pads, this is just that screen that we saw earlier, so it allows you to do quite a few things, and they have a bunch of the defaults set up. So I can set up the megaphone and turn it right off. And they have a bunch of sounds built in as well. So that's pretty cool. One thing I wish that they did, which is really cool from like the GoXLR, for example, is the ability to record sounds in by holding in an empty pad or setting a pad to being a recording. I currently use that on my Stream Deck, but it'd be cool if that was built into this as well. That would be really nice. For the display settings, we can adjust the brightness of both the display and the buttons. So let's do dim after 30 minutes on there. And metering. So I like broadcast metering. It actually shows the dB levels for everything. I really like that. I don't like just having the simple thing. I like it so that it helps me line it up with OBS as well, which is kind of cool. Haptics, so you can have haptics on all of the buttons, which is also pretty nice. And the record button, you can change the way that the record button operates, where you press to pause and then holding it will stop, or you single press to stop and you hold to pause. Now, I would rather have press to pause so that I'm not accidentally stopping a recording. I'm just pausing it by accident. So I'm going to leave it as is. Now for the show, this allows you to create new shows, allows you to import shows, allows you to export shows. So for whatever reason, you and all your friends all have a lot of money and you guys have all bought these, you can share shows with one another. If you're going to be going from one place to another, they also have one. You can import your show. Or if you just like having them and sharing them with other people, you can do that as well. You can create new shows. So, we're probably going to create another one, and I'm going to do one for streaming. And then systems. So we can take a look at our network. So you can see our network is here. You can adjust your Bluetooth, and this is where you would add more Bluetooth devices. For MIDI control, so this allows for bi-directional MIDI control. So this is pretty important if you want to utilize that MIDI stuff, which is pretty sweet. Date and time is what we did at the beginning. Language if you wanted to change language. And information will just tell you what version of the firmware you're on, your serial number, and you can also reset your device if you're going to end up selling it. And you can also utilize this to check for updates. Now the nice thing is all of those settings that we talked about and I showed you on the actual physical device, you can also change and control a lot of those in the Rode Central application, which is really, really nice. All you do is you click in here, we can go into audio setup, we can change which audio devices are set to the faders, we can change which ones are linked together, we can do a whole bunch of stuff from here. If we go back, we can change our device configuration, so we can change our outputs and their sensitivity, we can change how our monitors are working, we can adjust routing, we can adjust the way that the listen button works, we can do multi-tracking, we can change our processing for our master compeller. So basically everything that lived as a setting on that device, we can change it here, which makes things super easy. And I'm really happy that they've done it this way. There are a few things that I'd like to be a little bit better, but I think these might be things that'll get better over time. The other cool thing about Rode Central is that you can transfer your recordings. So you can actually pull any of the recordings that you did on the device using the SD card, and you can export them very easily without having to pull the SD card out of the device. I think this is really nice as well. Makes it a lot easier so you don't have to reach to the back of the device all the time, and you can just keep it in its position, especially if you have it mounted on some kind of stand or on a VESA mount. Sometimes that can get a little bit harder to get to. If you want to add your own sounds from your computer, you can do that all here. You can change the way that they operate. You can add effects, although the effects are the exact same ones as you would see on the device. You can add the mixer stuff, like we talked about, the sensor, trash talk, fade in and out, the ducking, all those fun things. And you can also set up the MIDI from here, so you can set all of the values. You can set them to custom values to work with particular things. If you know the values of certain MIDI devices that you currently use that you're going to get off of your desk and replace with the Rodecaster, as long as you know the values of everything, you'll be able to easily replace it, which is really, really cool. How do I feel about the Rodecaster? It's going to be a learning curve for sure. It's going to take me a while to get it to a point, probably, that I had my MG10XU at. I'm not going to unplug my MG10XU until I feel the Rodecaster is at a position that it does everything my MG10XU does and more, obviously, for the price that I paid for it, even if I did get it for a pretty good deal. But I am really excited. I think this is going to add a lot more flexibility. I think it's going to add a lot more potential for me. It's going to add some fun. I really do like getting new tech and tinkering with it and trying to make it work better. So I am very much looking forward to that. And I mean, final thoughts. I think the build quality of this thing is great. I really like the touchscreen. It is way better than I thought it was. Visually, it looks great. Responsiveness is fantastic. It feels really, really good. The buttons feel great. The sliders feel great. The knobs feel great. Everything feels really, really good, and I'm really excited about that right now. I thought I would kind of close it off with my current pros and cons for this. And we'll start with some pros. First pro is obviously the preamps on this thing are leaps and bounds above most other preamps. Now, they're so strong in here that you can use the Rodecaster Pro II and a Shure SM7B without using a cloud lifter. Now, for anybody who does have an SM7B, you know that most Most of you have probably had to use a cloud lifter in order to get enough of that power to the SM7B to be able to hear anything. But with the Rodecaster, you don't need that. It has the power delivered to that microphone in order for it to work without anything else, which is really good. They also sound super clean, super crisp. I don't hear a lot of noise, and that is really, really nice. Second pro is how easy it is to set up a microphone. Anybody that's gone to an XLR microphone from USB microphones will know that trying to tweak your microphone to get it set up and sounding the way you want it to is not always the easiest, and it is a learning curve, and it's something that people will improve over time. But setting it up on the Rodecaster is so easy because you just choose a template, and if it has your microphone, that's even better because the template is even better for you. But you can just choose a template, you choose your microphone, and you're good to go. Also, the processing and all of that stuff, as I mentioned earlier, is so intuitive, and even though there are a lot there and it is a little bit overwhelming, the way that they display it and walk you through kind of the process of it, just by the UI, is really nice, intuitive, and it made things a lot easier. Now, another major pro is being able to assign the faders to whatever you want. This is super incredible because, for example, on my MG10XU, the only things I ever really touched very often were my microphone, my gaming PC, and my streaming PC, and it was just the audio in levels. And all the other faders, for the most part, went unused. So it's nice to be able to control a few other things through here and have a little bit more of that granularity and that flexibility to switch things around, which I think is really, really cool. Another really cool feature is the ability to both record on the SD card and on the PC simultaneously, so I can always have audio backups whenever I'm recording videos. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, you may know that some of them have a few audio issues, and that probably could have been fixed by having an audio backup that wasn't just the audio going into OBS, for example. So I think that's a really nice feature as well. Now, for some cons, however, one thing that I think is severely lacking on this device, for its price point and for the capability that I think it should have, is adding more virtual outputs. Having more virtual channels would be amazing, and it is unfortunate, and I consider it a pretty big con that only USB 1 can have the multi-channel. USB 2 has pretty minimal in and out. It would be great if both of those had that same flexibility. And if you know anything about the GoXLR, it allows you to split up your microphone, your chat, your music, and another source, and having all of that flexibility is great. Unfortunately, as it is right now with the Rodecaster Pro II, you only have the ability to have the two, the main and the chat, and that is just a little bit lacking, especially if you're streaming and playing video games, especially because you usually want to have your game, you usually want to have your chat, so those two are covered, but having music would be really, really nice to be able to control a little bit more, and having an extra one would also be nice. Another slight con is the fact that Rode is promising a lot of things in the future through updates. And if you've watched this channel for a long time, you'll know that I always say do not buy a product for what it will be. Buy the product for what it is now. And if you want it to be what it will be in the future, you wait until that future comes before you buy it. Because a lot of people get burned where they're like, hey, this company promised to do this thing in the future, so I'm going to buy it now and then enjoy that future when it comes, and that future never shows up. So never buy a product for the future a company promises for you. It is nice that they can add new features through firmware updates and stuff like that, but do not rely on their promise of doing that, because some things just don't end up happening. They end up releasing another product that replaces this one. They're not going to be releasing any more firmware updates. So don't rely on a future. And the last con is obviously the price. It is pretty eye-watering. $700 US, almost $1,000 Canadian is a lot of money. Now, if you can get lucky like I did and find something open box, it's a lot easier to digest in terms of price. And I think I'm going to be able to get my money's worth out of it over time, considering how much I use my mixer, right? As I mentioned, I use my mixer basically every day between YouTube and Twitch stuff. So I will definitely get my use case out of it. But Is that the case for everybody? I don't know. What I would say is take a look at all the features, take a look at all of its abilities as it is right now and not what it's going to be in the future. And if that price makes sense to you and you're able to afford it, then definitely check this thing out. It's really, really good. Again, I will probably do a follow-up video, maybe sometime in August or September. I will be away for a little bit in July and August, so it will be a little bit more difficult to do something, but it would be great to do a follow-up video to see how I'm feeling about this and to give you guys a little bit more of an in-depth feeling instead of just how I feel about it today. Now, with all that in mind, would I be recommending the Rodecaster Pro II to you? And that all depends on if you're going to be using it to its full extent. It's a very expensive piece of kit, and if you're not using at least a majority of the features that it brings, you are overpaying for something that is $700 US. Now, the first major one is if you're going to be using all of those inputs and outputs. If you're not going to be using the 4 inputs, going with something like the Rodecaster Duo, which released a little bit after the Rodecaster Pro II, and it's basically a Rodecaster Pro II in a smaller form factor. It's only got 2 input outputs, it's only got 4 sliders, and it's got 6 buttons, but it runs on the exact same software, so everything else is practically the same, just a lot smaller. And in the week that I've been recording and editing this video, TC Helicon actually just announced that the GoXLR is practically dead. They laid off their entire Canadian office, which was the team supporting the GoXLR and doing all the software updates, so they are not going to be releasing any more updates for the device officially. Now, there is a volunteer team of some people that are working on some third-party programs that will be able to continue to interface with the GoXLR, but unfortunately, it's hard to rely on people who are volunteering their time and doing things, not as a job. It's going to be really difficult now to recommend the GoXLR to people. And with that in mind as well, the Rodecaster Duo just seems like an even better idea. But unfortunately, I do not personally have a Rodecaster Duo, and I don't have the money to go out and buy one. But with knowing that it is basically a condensed version of the Rodecaster Pro II, it came out afterwards, so it did not have any of the early adopter pains that the Procaster Pro II had in terms of software, because all of those things have been smoothed out for the most part within the Rodecaster Pro II, and the Duo using the exact same software means that it benefited from that. I am confident that if you really like the idea of the Rodecaster Pro II, but you won't be using it in terms of all of those inputs, the Rodecaster Duo is a really good alternative. It won't hurt your wallet as much. $500 instead of $700. Still not cheap, but quite a bit cheaper. And it's something where if you're going to be using it as much as, for example, I do, where I'm streaming and recording YouTube videos almost every single day, then I think it's a really great investment. Now, I do hope you found this video helpful, and if you didn't, I hope you at least found it interesting. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you like, subscribed. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to leave those down in the comment section below. Big thanks to my patron sponsors, Slots Time and Stepback. Support like that is something that allows me to be able to take a risk and buy some products to be able to cover it on the channel. Most products that I do talk about on the channel are not provided to me, and I do have to go out and buy them myself. So being able to have that flexibility is great, and I can't appreciate it any more than I currently do. But also, thank you for watching to the end of this video. If you do want to check out any of my other product reviews, you can go ahead and check out the playlist right up here. As always, stay safe out there. I'll see you next Saturday.